Hey, what's up? This is Shift Talk. We are doing this live, kind of like NPR Tiny Desk, but we're in the Island ECC office right now. You can see behind us, Danny is trying to work over there. Kevin is also trying to work, but we're doing this because we wanted to try something new, but also this might be the last Shift Talk podcast in a while, only because I might be a father soon. But anyway, I want to introduce our guests. They've been here. Actually, Kevin, you've never been on the show, but Jess, you guys know her. Now you guys can put the face to the voice. Jess.
Yes, that's me.
And we also have Kev. Now, you may have seen these guys from Night Shift. They were on the panel. There was one other panelist, Carolyn, but we thought her opinions were not as important, so we didn't invite her into this.
Not true. We love you, Carolyn.
We love you, Carolyn. It's just we only have space for 3, so you cut off. Anyway, so here's what we're gonna do. This is gonna be where we go through the rest of the questions that you guys asked, and we're gonna get your unfiltered opinions about these questions. Okay, so let's get right to it. First question, Kevin. Why are you single when you are so good looking? Honestly, this got the most hits, the highest likes.
I just want to say I know who posted this. And
he says this as he's rocking his Monopoly shirt. Man, so good looking. Okay, well, let's just jump right into the actual questions. The first one, I think I'm going to classify these questions along major themes. And the first question is about how do you find like the right person? Like, how do you know if a person is good for you? Will God give you like a particular sign?
I don't think God would give you a particular sign, so to speak, but there will be certain green lights, I guess you can say, or certain qualities that you see in the other person that it's like, oh, like this guy is solid in his walk with God. It's something worth taking note of. And so I think my short answer would be no. You wouldn't see signs.
Okay, so no signs. We can get beyond that.
That's
I would agree. No signs, usually. But how do you know if someone is right for you? Kev, you got an opinion?
Yeah. So kind of also answering the bit about the signs. I think yes, actually, on the signs, but I think is not like what people think the signs are. Like,
tell us more. So we're not talking like, oh, God's gonna illuminate this person and she'll be glowing.
Right.
Like,
There's not gonna be like a spotlight from heaven singling out this person from like the crowd.
That doesn't happen.
No,
It's not. I don't think it's like necessarily like a supernatural sign that some people would like come to expect. Like, oh God, if this is the right person, make it rain tomorrow or something like that. You know. But I do see like God has given us like the capacity to consider, and the community to also like ponder together. Like, what I mean is, when all your friends say no to someone, that is a sign.
Yes.
And that's not a sign that people don't usually think of that as a sign. So what I'm saying is, if you're asking signs from God, can you? Yes, but be comprehensive about it. Don't ignore certain signs for another. That everything in your life God is putting around you is some kind of a sign. You know,
so
like
good.
there's a reason. Like your friends are there. Like they advise you. They want
The best for you.
the best for you too. Like you know, you don't just ignore what they have to say.
So let's go along that line. Like you're talking about signs, so signs from the community, everyone kind of approves or is, you know, or if your community is bringing up red flags all the time, that's a sign, right? What are some of these other signs that you guys have seen in your own communities?
Good signs or bad signs?
Both. Okay, they're thinking. Can't edit this out, you know?
I think when it comes to good signs, it's a lot about looking at the way they interact with other people. And it is in close proximity. And I think one thing that I really appreciate about one of the messages that I learned or watched from Ben Stewart from Passion City Church, Washington, D.C., is he talked about, there, of course, dating is actually evaluating one another. It's getting to know one another on a more in close proximity. It's really engaging with someone, getting to know them, asking questions, learning about their hobbies, learning about their character, their personality. So that's why it's not just dating in isolation, but it's dating in community. And so I think I really like what Kevin was saying about being aware of like inviting other people alongside. And if you do have certain red flags that's because I think sometimes what happens, at least for me, I know myself, is I can be blindsided, or like I can kind of, I have my blind spots. And so it's good to have friends around you to point, hey, like, take note of this. But of course, if there's positive things that they do see, it's just like, hey, like, I think that's what has happened right now. Like, as I'm dating right now, I really thank God for the sisters that are around me, because they get to also meet, my boyfriend, and be able to be like, hey, like, he does seem, a guy who really honors you, and honors God. And I think that really just reaffirms me as like, hey, like, this is someone that I want to get to know more of. And I think it's throughout that journey, seeing it, not just him saying it, but really living it out as well. And that only comes by getting to know someone. Yeah. And so I think that for me, it's really, does this person honor other people? Does this person honor God? Does this person, how is this person like in community, with his family, with his friends, with his coworkers? Yeah. And it's just getting to know them in all aspects. And for that person to also get to know me. Yeah.
Kev, you got anything to add?
There's a lot. I don't know if there's any specific one that I want to bring up, but I think, I like what Jess said about like living it out in community, not in isolation. I think you can set yourself up in a way that you are open with your friend groups and community, such that they are in a position to be able to comment on the effect that a relationship or a person has on you. So if they notice that like the effect on you is like not so good, you give, and then and your relationship with them is such that they have the space to like speak up about it, then you set yourself up to be like in a place where you have counsel, and that is a sign.
Yeah.
And another thing is that this also works the other way. You can also observe how the other person is with their friends. Like, that is also another sign, I guess, that you can also like kind of try to pick up on.
So what I hear both of you saying a lot is like there's going to be signs. Like, this is why it's important to date in community, because you get a lot of those signs. Let me add a few things just within the relationship itself. Certain signs within the relationship. Number one is it? I'm going to say this and I'm going to clarify it. Is it easy? Meaning, is talking with this person, is being with this person easy? Because there are some relationships that you find yourself in, you're like, oh, you really have to work hard at just being with this person. That's something that there might be a chemistry issue. One thing we'll talk about in the next question are like non-negotiables. My perspective on that is, other than loving God, I have very little in terms of non-negotiables, except that there is just this chemistry, this like desire to be with them. So when you're not with them, do you think about them? When they're not with you, do they think about you? You know what I'm saying? Like, those are big indicators of whether you like each other at that level. Yeah. And that, as obvious as that sounds, sometimes I feel like I've seen too many relationships that just seem like they're forcing it, in particular within the Christian church, because I find that people, they get into a relationship with another Christian and they think this has got to go the distance, and you're within church, you have all these communities tied together, right? So you might be dating someone in your care group, and you really need to make it work. And so you're forcing this when, you're sitting at a table, over dinner, and it's just awkward. The other sign, a good sign, is, are you comfortable in the silence? Like, yes. That's a very good sign. Like, do you feel like you always have to constantly fill the time by talking?
Or like ask questions?
Or can you just like be with each other? Those are signs not obvious signs, obviously not signs that God is giving you, but like these are signs of whether there's chemistry, whether this person is right for you or not. So anyway,
Said it very well.
Yeah.
I think why don't we go to the non-negotiable question? So the question is, apart from being a Christian, what other non-negotiable characteristics should my partner have? So now you guys know my perspective, but what's your perspective?
Non-negotiable.
What was on your non-negotiable list before you started dating?
For me, it was, does this person, I think it's a little hard. I'm trying to like see how to word it in a way. But I would say, yes, is this person a Christian? And I think the other aspect is just how they treat other people. I think it's really their, are they considerate? Are they kind-hearted? Do they, do you see them like, in community and, encouraging other brothers and sisters in Christ, or, how are they like with their family? Like, I think family is something very important to my heart.
So these are questions that you're asking, but would you say these are like
non-negotiable?
like checking? Okay.
Oh, no. I wouldn't say they're like.
So these are
checking the
definitely
list.
great questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say it's like, because I don't think we have like a list that I would check through to be like, oh, this guy fits all my qualities. Like, I don't think it's like a commodity kind of thing.
Right.
But it's more of like, this person is another human being.
But is that so? This is just someone who, I haven't been single in a while. But is that a common thing? Because I know when I was dating, it was like lots of people had major lists of everything they needed from their spouse or from their boyfriend. Is that still a thing? Do you find yourself in conversations with people like talking about this list of qualities that they want?
Well, in all honesty, I did have that list too. But of course, I've learned to kind of like.
And you know what, ladies? Now she's dating, so just saying.
But the thing is, like, you really have to surrender that list to God, because at the end of the day, it's not about finding someone to fulfill that list, because you could have a whole long, like super long list. And to be honest, it's like only a perfect person can fit that list. And the truth is there's no perfect person in this world. And I think for me, what I've experienced myself is when I look at my boyfriend is very different. Like, he and I are so different. The qualities that I thought I would seek, like that were so-called on my list, were not on the list, But then we still work, we still are, we still.
Would your current boyfriend right now
Yeah.
pass the test with that list that you had 5 years ago?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting how back then, like as maybe like I think growing up, you do have, I think maybe it's thanks to Korean dramas or like how people portray it in TV shows and stuff.
Right.
You will have an ideal guy of
Hyun Bin, baby. Let's go. Crash Landing. He's my boy.
I still have yet to see that Korean drama. But anyways, I don't like, I think back then when I did have a list, but then I think over time you learn to surrender that, because you're like, it's not about finding someone to fulfill that list, but it's actually more about finding someone to be in companionship with, to journey together in, accomplishing and furthering God's kingdom together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so in a way, like, that can happen in any other way. I think for me, I can share one of the aspects of what I saw was, I need the other person, because I love missions. And so I was like, okay, my other spouse, like my spouse, needs to also love missions as well. But for me, my missions was like, going to Africa and serving like, the kids there, and for my boyfriend, he's never been to Africa before. But if I was holding on to the fact that I need someone who has a heart for Africa, who loves children and all that, but then I would miss out on my boyfriend, because he may not necessarily have a heart for Africa, so to speak, but he does have a heart for the Lord and for serving people. And that is being and a heart for missions, but it's just actualized, or it's expressed in a different way. Yeah. And so I think, it's just being very mindful of.
You wanted a missionary boyfriend, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. All right, Kev. What about you, man?
For me, So where I am with this right now is that so far, I find almost no correlation. I find that everyone has a list. I find that everyone has a list. They might or might not be conscious about it. But everyone does have a list of their desires and preferences about what the other person they hope to be would be like. But I found that there was almost no correlation between the things on this list and the person they end up with.
I agree.
There's so many friends who end up together with someone and they're like, well, I know I said that this was important to me, but and they find someone who's not anything like the person that they tried to describe on that list, right? And I've also know a lot of people who also like, okay, they know someone, and then they're like, oh, it's kind of weird because there's this person that I know who checks everything on my list, but
No
somehow
chemistry.
I'm not attracted to
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
Exactly. So is this list there? I think everyone does have a list, and I think it's good to be aware of what's on your list. There's so many factors that kind of like influence our list, like the things that we watch, the cultural expectations, expectations of people around us and our friends, and our own like preferences and desires. So it's good to be aware of what's on that list, but when it comes down to determining whether like you and another person have a potential to be in a relationship, I find that it's usually not relevant.
Yeah,
It
very good
doesn't-
point, guys.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
Let's talk about the first thing on that list, though.
Uh-huh.
God, right? Being Christian. Now, this is going to be the most often asked questions. In fact, on this list, there's probably 6 questions that have to do with this, which is essentially, can I date a non-Christian as long as he or she is not against me being a Christian? As long as they're okay with it, Obviously, if they're not okay with it, that's not good. But, like, what's your guys' take on dating someone who is not professing to be Christian?
My short answer would be no.
Ooh, dang.
I'm
Drop in the
sorry.
mic. Take that
I'm
mic drop
sorry. Yeah, I think I know that. I mean, the thing is, I do have friends who are dating non-Christians. I even have friends who are married to a non-Christian as well, and
Definitely a different conversation now when you bring
Yeah.
marriage into it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's speak to the dating part
okay.
first.
yeah, I think when it comes to dating, for me at least, God is really just a huge part of my life, if not all of my life, basically. And if my boyfriend doesn't necessarily share that same faith, it's like you kind of miss out a very special part of the spiritual side of intimacy that you can connect with your boyfriend or like your partner. Because for me, like, I think what I cherish most about my boyfriend and I is we have this, we share the same faith, and we're able to, pray together. We're able to, let's say we're going through a struggle, we can actually lift it up to God together. Or when I need encouragement, he points me back to God. Or when he sees me going, slightly off track, he'll know how to pull me back to God. And so I feel there's that accountability. There is that someone who can, should just lead me back to God. And so I do think, for me at least, I would,
Yeah, you'd
date.
say no.
Yeah, I would say no.
Yeah. Kev?
For me, I know I can't do it. And I also think that most people should not. But I don't think it's wrong per se.
Right. As in, will you find passages that say don't date a non-Christian, don't marry a non-Christian? Well, actually, a lot of the marriages in Scripture were outside. I mean,
Yeah.
there's difficulty in that, in trying to say that the Bible mandates it, but I definitely agree with you. If this is the central core thing about your life, then it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah. And that's it. Like I don't think even the Bible says that it's explicitly a sin, but like it's not a sin to be married to a non-Christian, but it is very difficult. It is very, very difficult. And yeah, I know that I can't. So if the reason that you are considering it is because, oh, I can't seem to find anyone who is Christian, I don't think you should then, I don't think the answer to that is then I should start considering dating someone who's not Christian.
Well, what if, okay, let's say, what if you think the person is so close to being Christian? Like, they're open to it. Like this question says, they're open to it. They're okay with me being Christian. They even talk about God every now and then. They'll come to church. So they're so close.
Yeah.
Is that like a gray area where we can be like, all right, go ahead?
I do think you can get, because the thing is, when you're sharing that, I'm reminded of one sister who was like that. She started dating her boyfriend back in high school, like first year of high school. And they've been together, and they only just recently married a few years ago. And it's because she was waiting for him to come to know, like, to really put his faith into Christ, in Christ, like come to Christ. And so for her, it was a really long wait. But I think it's like it's kind of like, I would say you can journey along with this person, like in pursuing after God. If this person is open to it, okay, like go pursue God. Like if you're going to go to Alpha, like, okay, get to know God through Alpha. I think it's the support of walking together, but I think if you have your intention of like marriage, then I think that's something.
A caveat I would add on to that is, I think it's hard, and I think it's unfair to do that in the context of a dating relationship. So if that person is close and you think they're gonna become Christian, we'll just wait. Like don't even go into that dating realm, because one thing I think you need to have, like, on the top of your mind, like, you have to have the possibility of this being the case, which is that they never actually come to faith.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
So if you think that you can bring them to faith, then I think there might be a savior mentality issue, but we won't speak to that. But you should do that in the context of friendship. Like continue to spur this person on, encourage them, bring them to church, outside the context of a relationship. And I say that for the sake of that person, because I think oftentimes they will feel the pressure, you know, if they're interested in you, they will feel the pressure to become Christian just so they can win you over.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing that you would want happening, right? You want them to love God for God, not for you.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that's an unfair thing to place on them, especially when they are close.
Yeah.
So I would say my answer to this is, I would not date a Christian. I would not date a non-Christian, especially if you think they are close.
Yes.
Because that is the critical moment where you say, Jesus is the one you're going towards.
Yeah.
I don't want to step into this.
That's good.
And I don't want to get us all entangled and hoping that you will eventually come to faith.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are considering someone because they are seeking, then even though you're not saying it explicitly, but basically you are still considering your relationship with this person contingent on that person becoming a Christian.
Yeah.
And that means you're basically not taking them unconditionally for who they are right now. And I know a lot of friends and people who they're not Christian, and they end up being close with someone who is Christian, and then after they get so close, suddenly they feel like they're held at gunpoint, being asked that question at the end, look, I can only seriously consider someone who is Christian. Would you like convert, basically? And they feel that like, so they're very hurt by that.
It's very damaging.
Yes, it's kind of traumatizing almost, right? Because you're basically effectively leading someone on at that point, given the expectations that you can take them for who they are, and then at the end you basically give them like an ultimatum, that like, hey, if you will not convert, then this will not work. And don't do that to people.
Right. Now, if you happen to be in relationships where it all worked out, I think there are anecdotes left and right of it working out. I wouldn't say that's the standard. You know, I think that's the grace of God that has made those relationships work. Now, would we three recommend that you do this? No. And we know it's hard, and we know that there's nuances to this, and there are unique situations that will be different for every person. But, you know, I think that it's a really hard thing for us to just say, yeah, go ahead and do it. Because your relationship to God and the other person's relationship to God is much more important than whatever this relationship you could possibly have. So there's no easy way to come at that. It's easy for us to say that into the camera, but I know if we sat across from a table from you to talk about this, it's much harder for me to just say that to your face. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the only situation where I can kind of consider like supporting a friend in good faith is if it's not like out of the blue, or it's not like quote unquote like an escape from not finding anyone who's like Christian, right? But if there's like, let's say this hypothetical of like, oh, there's someone that I know, and then there's someone that they know, like maybe a childhood friend or something, they've been close together for like the longest time or something, and then they consider spending the rest of their life with that person. They're Christian and that friend is not. Maybe they will take that step and say, you know what, if I spend the rest of my life living together with this person, loving him or her with the love that Christ has given me, even if they might not become a Christian for the rest of our lives, that is still a good use of my life. Like if they consider it that way, or if they make that decision, then it's their decision, it's their life. It's like sure, and they so it's with that full awareness of what they're getting into, it's that full maturity of and preparedness of the difficulties that lie ahead. Then in that case, I say, well, yeah, go.
In that case, I would say, please count the costs fully.
Yes,
you know,
and then if you still do, then bring holiness to that
another
marriage.
wrinkle I would add into this is, are you able to step into that intimate of a relationship without being influenced in that way for a lifelong relationship?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that is also like that's part of the cost that is to be considered. Is this going to affect your faith?
Yeah.
Right.
And it will.
And yeah, it will. But like, are you prepared to guard your heart so that like you're basically still trying to grow in your faith and everything, and this person cannot help you with that as much as they will try to support you, but they cannot help you with that, right?
Yeah.
So when Paul says that don't be unequally yoked, I think most of the time we forget that it's the Christian, it's us who is burdened with that yoke, not the other person. And even though they can try to support you, they can try to help push that cart with you, but they can't, like, you know, you're the person with the yoke. And marriage is hard enough without the unevenness of you trying to pull that cart yourself while trying to walk with your spouse, the other person, on the same path at the same pace together.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. I mean, yeah, that was... Hey, if you want more, there is a YouTube clip where I respond to that specific question about being unequally yoked. It's in the... Just go... Let's talk about boundaries in friendships and in relationships. So let's... Within the context of dating relationships first, how do you deal with sexual urges, Jessica?
It's hard. It's very hard, I can say. Yeah, I think it definitely exists. I think it's because you and him are, like, over time you're getting to know someone more on an more personal level. And what happens is you may be more emotionally connected, spiritually connected, and I think it's naturally that you would want and desire the physical intimacy as well. And so I think one of the boundaries that I would highly suggest is try not to be alone together in a home, like in a room together. I think for me, it sets myself up for, you know, the temptation is very real. And so I do set boundaries, like now I do. I think, I know, very sorry for the but I do set more boundaries because both of us, our love language, our second highest love language is physical touch.
Yes.
And so I think for us, I think it's definitely challenging. But I think what my boyfriend and I actually did was, I know not all couples do this.
Purity ring?
No, not a purity ring. But on the first night when we defined the relationship, we immediately talked about boundaries.
So Christian.
Yeah. So we did talk about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable.
Yeah.
It's just getting it out there and having that conversation to make sure we're on the same
I agree.
plane.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Kev, you got any thoughts?
Well done.
Well done.
No, what
On
like,
boundaries. How do you for sexual urges within dating relationships?
dating relationships? Yeah, it was hard for me because my love language is also physical touch, and yeah,
I feel like everyone's, when they first start dating, is physical touch, guys. Let's just say it. I'm just telling you.
yeah, probably.
Mine was too, but now it's not so much.
No, I think mine is like high even outside of like romantic relationships.
Okay.
So yeah, it's hard for me. Yeah, so I agree with everything you said, that like there is a natural progression, and if this is part of your like vocabulary of expression of love, then you naturally desire towards like more physical intimacy as well. But yeah, I think there are ways to express that outside of where you should not go.
I can't edit any of this out, guys.
Sorry about that. Yeah, you don't have to consider like sex outside of marriage. Like that's not. I know that we harp on that a lot as like culturally it's seen like very acceptable. Like of course you would want to, like if you're dating or not. But the truth is, and I'm saying this as a person whose love language is like physical touch, that's not the only way. And yeah, you're fine with like appreciate like holding hands, and that's not something you have to do like alone. You can hold hands in public.
Right.
That's fine.
Right.
Give them a hug.
Yeah, Jess.
I think there's one thing to add though, like when it comes to boundaries, is really do talk to your partner about it on what is acceptable and what is not.
Yes,
because I think sometimes, you might feel it's okay to, let's say, kiss, but your partner may not necessarily, because that could be a temptation to act. I think it's like how far, because then I think, let's say the boundary is here. If you touch this, then it's like, crossing it. And so it's kind of like, how can you be very mindful of, what is acceptable between you and your partner, and to not try to tempt each other. Because I think sometimes there's a temptation there's the temptation of like, you want more of it. But the thing is, it's also making sure you have that boundary and to be able to respect each other of that boundary that you set. Because let's say for me, it's like, okay, kissing is not okay. But for my boyfriend, it is okay. But then he'll have to respect me to not necessarily jump to that point.
Right.
Yeah, out of respect, out of honor.
I think being on the same page is very important, like that communication.
Communication is very important. I will say that no matter what boundaries you set, I think one of the conversation at the level of conversation you have about boundaries has to be also like, how late is too late to hang out? Where can we hang out? Can we hang out in the home together? Like those are important things to happen, because in the heat of the moment, those boundaries go away. They really do. So you need to not only talk about the things that where your physical boundaries are, but like maybe what the boundaries of your time together is going to be. I think that's important to have.
Yeah, that's good.
So hopefully that was helpful. What about we'll kind of touch on this. Boundaries within friendships. Okay, the question was, let's say I've been best friends with this person for the longest time. How do I move from friendship to being lovers? The word lovers was used. So essentially, if you feel like you've been friend-zoned, what do you do?
Do you have anything to say?
Sure. I think the original phrasing of that question has like two possible interpretations. Like one is, if you have started dating someone who's been friend for the longest time, how do you transition to a more romantic nature of that relationship, and I say that one, it'll just come to you. Like, don't worry about it too much. Don't stress about it.
One thing I would say to that is I see this happening in church a lot. Just go on dates where it's just you two. Like, I think there are some people who are so like, community is everything. Like, they need to be dating within the community. So it's like, let's go to all the hangouts with everybody. I'm like, no, just you two go on a date. Like, spend time together.
Yeah. Don't worry too much about the labels, whether something, is what we're doing right now platonic or is it like more romantic? Forget about that. Just learn to enjoy it.
That's why I think you got to DTR it. You got to define that relationship. Bro.
No, yeah, but when you're dating and if this is your concern, or like, oh, have we never moved on past friendship? That's not a thing, right? Like, it's just learn to enjoy your time with that person, just and then spend time with them, like what you said. So that's like, if we're talking about someone who's like been friends for a long time and then now they start dating,
and it's kind of weird because they're your best friend. But
yeah, it's fine. That's gonna go away.
Sometimes it doesn't go away though. I will say that sometimes it doesn't, and then you have to call a spade and say, maybe they're like, we were great friends, and maybe we don't connect at this level. I've seen that happen.
Yeah,
it's been my experience. I've had that in the past. Where
Okay.
I was friends, and we started dating, and it was precisely because it felt like everything was a lot of work.
Okay, yeah. If there's no deeper connection that ends up out of that, that's a great time to be asking, like, maybe this is not meant to be like more than just friendship. But if I also have friends who are stressed because they're comparing their relationship with other people, and they're like, oh, why are we not as romantic as other people? Of course you're not going to be.
Sure.
Like, because every relationship's different, and if you are now dating someone and you were friends with that person for a long time, of course your dynamic is going to be different from people who started dating after they just met for a shorter period of time. So don't stress yourself out by comparing and having expectations of what your romantic relationship is supposed to look like. The dynamic is different for everyone, and like, getting into that comparison trap is actually unhealthy for the relationship.
Okay, good. Now speak to the other group.
Right. So the other one is, if I am attracted to someone and we've been friends for the longest time and they see me as just a friend.
That sucks, dude.
How do I get out from that? You can't.
Look at the heartbreak on his face. I hope you do a close-up right now.
No, trust me, you can't. If no, what I'm saying is that there is nothing you can do to. Might they change your mind because of something that happens in the future? Yes, but that is absolutely outside of your control, and there's nothing that you can do to change that because of an action from your side. So the best thing that you can do is take it with grace and move on with your life, live your life. Don't make plans based on the slim possibility of, like, what if in the future they change their mind. Like,
this ain't a Hollywood movie, okay? Can't just fast forward 5 years and then like serendipity.
Yeah, if a friend does not see you that way, then there's nothing you can do there's nothing you can do to change their mind, and that is just it. Yeah.
Yeah, Jess, you got any thoughts?
You can't.
No.
Well, let me add one last thing to that. I think you waste a lot of time not clarifying that. Sometimes for the sake of the relationship, you're like, for the sake of the friendship, you're like, well, no, I don't want to ruin the friendship, so I'm not going to confess my love for this person. I think you owe it to yourself, and you actually owe it to your friend to be upfront about it, to actually communicate, hey, listen, I like you in this way. Just let's get it out on the table so I don't waste the next 3 years of my life kind of hoping that something will happen,
Yeah.
And I know that it's easy for us to say this here when we don't have actual friendships we're thinking of, but I've seen far too many people just hold up on their entire lives, just waiting for that person, never having the confidence to just lay it out on the table and communicate that. Because honestly, I would rather make that attempt and lose the friendship than to just continue to stay in this friendship where I guess I can watch from the sidelines as you get married, as you have kids, as you have grandkids. I'm still like, just like waiting there, you know? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you do, you clear that tension from the friendship as well.
Exactly. And now that's not going to come without cost, though. You know,
Yeah,
I think it
for
does
sure, yeah.
change the friendship.
Of course.
The friend might even have resentment towards you for doing that. But I think it's a cost that's worth paying.
Yeah.
So let's end on this because we went way longer than I thought, but you guys have so many insightful things to say. Let me just say this. Let's end on this. What are the best suggestions for those people out there struggling to be in a relationship? Meaning, I think they want to be in a relationship. They have this desire to be dating. They understand the whole singleness talk. Like, they're making use of their time right now, but they still have the heartbreak. As they're serving the Lord, they still have the heartbreak, right? So what is your suggestion for someone who's struggling, desiring, wanting to be in a relationship?
I think, like, if there is a lot of emotions or frustrations or discontentment that you feel, I think it's important to be able to find other people to, like, a community that you feel, a trusted community to share this with, and to walk together through this. Because I know it's not easy when you're doing it alone. Sometimes you feel like, you know, when is it going to happen to me? Has God forgotten about me? I think there's a lot of these thoughts that can come to our mind, but it is very important to not kind of go through that alone, because I think it's very dangerous, actually, because you start spiraling, like, all these negative thoughts about yourself, your value, your sense of worth. And so it's really important to find a trusted community to go, you know, to do it together. And in fact, I don't know if I'm allowed to, like, just kind of share, because I think for the girls who are out there who are, there is an upcoming, I think the Village Gathering, like the women's ministry, are going to be starting a single, like this, they're going to do a book together on singleness. And it's really just, how do you thrive in the singleness? And I think this is highly recommend ladies who are struggling with singleness, struggling with discontentment with where they are at. But it's really coming and journeying together with other, you know, single girls who are experiencing this struggle, and to be able to encourage each other. And so I think that's something that's actually going to be happening. So look out on, like, the What's Happening page, or even email women's ministry about it, and they'll have you the dates. And so I do believe it is important to go through this together with other trusted sisters, like, at least in my case, and I guess for brothers, trusted brothers too. But you can speak on maybe.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things you can kind of, like, do. Like, I think one of the healthiest things you can do is to be honest about it, that you're feeling some kind of resentment, you're feeling maybe anger towards God, you're feeling disappointment, you're feeling so there's a lot of negative emotions, obviously, when you're struggling with this, and I think that it is much better to try to address them, and you can't start working on them until you are honest that you're feeling these negative emotions. So some people try to, like, stuff this under the carpet, or feel that they're not allowed to have these feelings because, I'm so ungrateful towards God for being resentful, even though, like, I know that this is not something that God owes me, so they don't feel entitled to, they don't feel that they're allowed to experience and process these feelings. I think the healthiest thing that you can do is actually to just be honest that you do. And it's okay if you also feel bad for having these feelings, that also confess that to God. And that is how you can begin to work on these feelings and process them and build on them in a healthier way. And God can bring you also to a place of healing. He can't until you realize that you are hurting with all these emotions and expectations and hurt. And the other thing is also that even though, so I kind of not necessarily like the connotation that it brings in the English language when we say that someone's single, because it implies that they're alone. Just because you're not in a relationship does not mean that you have to be alone. So another thing that you can do is to learn how even you're not in a relationship, that does not mean that the friendships that you have are not real.
Yeah.
Does not mean that they're not there to support you, and that does not mean that you can't kind of lean on them in times of need to draw some love from those friendships that you have with your friends. And that is key, because if you are not in a relationship, then you don't want to kind of like follow into that self-fulfilling prophecy of that means you have to live your life alone.
Mm-hmm.
As a person who is not in a relationship, you also need to learn how to not be lonely. It is not good for you to be alone. And even and it does not take a relationship, or rather you should start to work on that regardless of your relationship status. Even if you do get into a relationship, you cannot hang on to a single other person to fulfill all those needs for you.
Yeah.
So you also need to already learn how to draw from your friends, your family, your support group, your mentors. And if you find that you don't have such relationships, then that is a place to start. Get plugged into community, find people that you trust, learn how to be vulnerable, learn how to be discerning in finding friends who actually do truly care about you. They mean well, and then they are safe places. Yeah. On the more practical side of things, it's very hard to. I know that when you're in that kind of like, it feels like you're sitting in a hole and you don't know like what's next, like what's the point of your life, or like something. It's very hard for you to find something that you're looking forward to in life. Practically speaking, don't make romantic relationships the thing that you're looking forward to in life, because relationships are a two-way thing. That's not entirely in your control. So find things that you can look forward to in life. Start enjoying your life a bit more. Lean into your hobbies maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Figure out what you like to do, reading, or like, for me it's like music, games, and I learn to enjoy them with.
I can tell, Monopoly for sure. Best game in the world. One thing I will say is that I appreciate you two, because I think you two are two great examples of, I know you're dating now, but even when you were not dating, you two are great examples of people who found themselves in very great supportive communities. Like, you have lots of friends, people who care about you deeply, and both of you in your own ways have learned to utilize the singleness and really find your passions, your pursuits, serving the way you want to serve, being with people that you want to be with. So I think you guys are great examples of how you can do the singleness thing well. But I think you're right on with those suggestions for those struggling to be in relationships. It's not. There's no instant solve, you know, and the moment you think that there's an instant solve, it's probably not true. So, anyway, any final words that you would want to give to shifters? It's okay if you have nothing, but if there's any word, no? Well, great. Get that purity ring, guys. Just kidding. Hey, I really appreciate this, and I know that people spoke really highly about the panel when you guys were up on the panel and how openly you guys talked. My hope is that we can have these conversations and we can be real, that we don't hide behind some of the typical church vernacular when it comes to singleness. And like you said, process those emotions. It's okay to be upset. Like, we want to provide that space for it. So anyway, that was our hope with this talk. Continue to engage with us. If you have questions, email them in. But guys, this was Shift Talk, maybe the final Shift Talk, and that makes me a little sad. But it's been quite a run. I'm sure maybe I'll get back onto it after Kirby's born, but maybe not. Anyway, this has been awesome. Thank you guys for joining me. I can't edit that, so that sucks. But that's the way to go out, right? That's kind of exactly the way Shift Talk feels. But our heart for our ministry is that you will thrive in your relationship with God, and in all these different spheres, like relationships and work and spiritual life. So we'll continue to engage in these topics. Okay. Anyway, thank you guys for being here, joining me, and having this talk.